How the heck are you guys? I'm Fastidious. Welcome to my channel and welcome to the first, maybe second, depending on how you classify it, video in a new series I'm gonna have, which is doing a tier list, doing a rankings of all the epic heroes in the game. So what we're gonna do today is going to be an epic hero tier list specifically for fighters. And like all the videos in this series will be, I'm joined by a great collaborator. So big shout out to Ronaldo Plays. You wanna say hi, Ronaldo?
What's up guys, and welcome. Some of you may know me from future collab with Fast. And yeah, I'm back here again, happy to be here, and let's get right into it.
Yeah, let's hop right in. And we're very happy to have you. Our last collaboration, I think, was quite a success. And Ronaldo's a really knowledgeable guy, guys, so this should be pretty darn good. So without further ado, let's hop into the gallery. There are 15 epic fighters in the game, 3 of which are lords. The video I put out with Ivy, which like I said, might be the first video of this series, depending on how you think of it, we covered the lords in that, so we will touch on them briefly here. Of course, they're included in our tier list you will see throughout this video. However, we're really gonna focus on the other 12. So the way we're gonna do it, we're just gonna literally move our way down this list. I've ordered it by faction. You can get a little sneak peek now, but we're gonna start off in the gallery with the cultists. And our first one, we'll do it alphabetically through each faction we're working within, and that's gonna be Atrox, so one of the newer members here. So, what do you think about Atrox, Ronaldo? What's there to say? He's pretty straightforward, right?
Yeah, he's pretty straightforward. He's pretty cheesy, but he has a low cost, low revival time, which basically indicates what he wants to do, right? He wants to die, basically. And on his death, he just does a bunch of AoE damage. And for me, it's just a 4-star Cerberus. Yeah,
I think that's a perfect way to describe him, guys. He's cheesy, I guess, but if you're doing something cheesy with him, you are just using him the way he's intended, which is he's someone you drop and then he does some damage and then he's dead. You can see, born to die. That's the first thing in his description right there. We can go very quickly through his things. He's got some damage here. He's got a nice little burst here. He reduces his HP and does some damage. Here he's got a ground effect after death, so you kind of want him to die. And then finally he's got the thing which all members of, even though I said he was a cultist, a lot of the cultists actually have dual faction membership, so you'll see that once more in this video. He's also a chaotic, and chaotic all get this nice arena cost reduced because chaotic is the pay-to-win faction, so it's got to be good in PvP, right? You can see here, guys, he can't be healed. The arrival time is greatly reduced. This is the whole way his kit works, right? So we can head right back over to our tier list right here, and you can see the ratings we gave him. So I'll go through very quickly. For unique abilities, that's just like what's a quick thing we can use to describe what makes this champion, this hero, like what makes them special. So he's a drop spammer. You kind of drop him, he does a bit of damage, he's dead. And then you can redo it again and again and again. Then we have Gear Raid 1, we gave him a B-. He does have some use because you can drop him, he does some AoE. Gear Raid 2, we think he's quite good. He's super low cost. If you bring a Volca, he's even less cost. You can kind of just keep dropping him, picking him back up, dropping him, picking him up. He dies, he's back, he dies, he's back. It works quite well, especially with those roly-poly-olies. AMR, we gave him a C. You can see one of the lowest ratings, maybe the lowest, second lowest rating here of any of the fighters, because fighters are really good for this stage, but the way he works, the only place you could really drop him is in the corners of the stages where you have the oozes, and he doesn't really seem to do enough damage unless you had like a crazy build to take those oozes out in an effective way. Then in campaign, I think there's a lot of nice cheesy stuff you could do with him, so we gave him a B. And finally, for faction, we gave him an S. He's one of the only viable, or only units, period, that's a melee unit, ground unit, that's an epic. It's really just him and Cyrene for the cultists, so I think that makes him instantly relevant. Anything you want to add, Ronaldo?
Yeah, maybe for some people that are a bit confused about the Gear Raid 1 B-, because he is basically just all AoE, right? The problem for him is just that he has only 3k attack, and at some point this is just not enough to go through defense. And you can say Cerberus is like top tier unit for Gear Raid 1, right? But he has double the amount of attack from Atrox, which makes a huge difference.
Yeah, so basically Cerberus just does what Atrox wishes he could do, but is too weak to do.
Exactly.
Yeah, very well put. So let's go on to Cyrene, and she's going to be pretty easy to talk about the same way one of these other champions, Dalyn will be easy to talk about. She's fairly straightforward. There's one thing that makes her unique, but essentially she's a cost regen champion. So she's the perfect teammate. As you can see, she recovers costs for your units, but she does have one special thing. So she's got some damage on the basic attack. It does not matter for cost regen people, but here you can see on her ultimate, she restores 12 cost immediately, but also applies increased crit rate. So I think we in our discussion, this definitely makes her quite strong earlier on when you don't really have late game builds or you can build full crit rate. I really like her for that reason. However, it is a bit niche, and she really is mostly just going to stand as a cost regenerating unit. You can see here she also has a touch of slow. She probably has the most interesting kit of any of the 3 current cost regen units we have in the game, between her, Dalyn, and then the rare Narvi. But yeah, maybe I'm going to head over here, and Ronaldo, you can take us through the rankings that we gave her.
Alright, so for Cyrene we have C for gear rate 1, D for gear rate 2, you don't use her in guild boss or arena, and AMR you have B-, campaign B, and faction A, simply for the same reason of Atrox. She's one of the rare units, ground units for the cultist faction. And the reason why are these ratings relatively low is simply because I personally had her early game, and I used her in bunch of stuff early game. In gear rate 1 I used her, in AMR I used her to generate this cost. But then later on, when you get to harder stages, you don't really have the time in the beginning of the fight to place one unit to generate more cost. And her cost generation is not that strong to make her valuable there.
Yeah, I'm definitely inclined to agree. I think she's great early on. However, I do need to generate costs just because the units I have on my team. However, for me, Dalyn is the better choice in a lot of things. However, I do want to notice she also has the same overall we gave her as Atrox, and we actually gave Dalyn the same thing. We're kind of using B- as a stand-in for niche but good. Like, it's very specific, but what they do, pretty good. So that would be Cyrene, guys. Let's move right along now to our next faction, and that is going to be Cyclone in the Esotericist. Let me switch back over to the game. You want to take us through here, Ronaldo?
Cyclone, for me, there's not much to say about Cyclone other than he's underwhelming, to say the least.
Oh, that's a more polite way to say it. Yeah, we think Cyclone sucks. We had a big call discussing all this, and you're about to see he has the worst ratings of anyone here. Maybe there's some piece of content that is yet to be added to the game where this dodge will matter at all, where this pushback will matter at all. But as far as we see it, we are not a fan, so we really don't need to harp on it. I will say he looks dang cool. I really like this kind of like elemental wind thing he's got going on. However, he got D's. Just straight across the board. We couldn't find anything. If you guys have any piece of content you're using Cyclone successfully in, please get in the comments and let us know. I also want to quickly talk about, before we move on to Janqhar, who would be a lot more fun for us to talk about. Whenever you see these dashes, guys, it means that it basically means they're unusable there, or there's no use for them there. So again, if you disagree with any of that, you can let us know in the comments. But yeah, someone like Atrox, you're not gonna do some random drop spam damage in Guild Boss, right? So let's move right along to someone who we're going to enjoy talking about, unlike Cyclone, and that is going to be Janqhar. So, Janqhar, where are you, buddy? We got a little mummy over here. Janqhar's really cool. He's got a lot going on in his kit, and he's quite powerful. So if we look here, just a little basic 2-hitter to enemies in range. Except not 2-hitter, it's like a multi-hit. So a little bit more potent than your average just single target basic. Then here we got in the ultimate, when activated, extends attack range. That's really cool. Anytime you get some ranged melee damage, it's very nice. And I want to point out, guys, he does magic damage. So that makes him relevant for a lot of content where other fighters might not succeed as much. And allows each attack to target one more enemy. Additionally, there's 30% chance to land a heavy slash with each attack, which deals even more damage. And this lasts for 15 seconds. It's pretty cool. He also can apply Curse. So if you're unfamiliar with Curse, do you know, Ronaldo, is it just him and Venoma in the game that use Curse?
And Comet.
Oh, of course, and Comet, my boy. So Curse, guys, it basically makes it so you can't use your basic attack, so you can't use your A1 moves. And that can be really, really helpful, especially when dealing with like tons of hard-hitting mobs. So we can take this right back over the tier list, and we can kind of explain exactly how that works and how it informs some of our ratings. You want to take it from here, Ronaldo?
Yeah, so I think, or we all came to agree that Janqhar is actually quite a bit of an underrated unit, and his main benefit is actually that he has 3 block, he has magic damage, and his curse makes him actually quite tanky compared to other fighters in this list. Which leads us to have him at B for gear rate 1, simply because he has, with his ultimate, 2 tile range, and on top of that magic damage, which is gear rate 1, basically all you need. And gear rate 2 also B, you can use him with the curse, it can help as well. Arena we have him B, AMR, we actually have him in A tier, simply because he can stall extra time with his curse. He can stall and give your units more time to take down Salazar. A campaign, he's A, and faction, he's S tier, simply because he's a ground unit for Estorotics, and there's not many.
Yeah, exactly. And then I do want to point out, I totally missed that, so thank you so much for catching it, guys. And this is just a great tip in general, unrelated to our tier list. But you can see here, you see 2 block. However, guys, if you go to hero details and click max level, some of the extra things are unlocked with promotion. It's kind of annoying that the base thing you see is them like totally stripped at 1 out of level 1, you know, with no promotions. However, one of his promotions does increase his block to 3. So he does have some nice tankiness to him. Not great HP, but very solid defense. And because he's going to be taking less damage because of his curse, he's really relevant for a lot of things. So yeah, we were pretty excited to cover Janqhar and yeah, explain to you guys why we enjoy him so much. So moving on to our next faction, and actually still doing a bit of ranged AoE magic damage. Here it's more of a proper AoE than just a multi-target. We're going to go to the Infernal Blast and talk about Scorch. So I will take this one because I've had Scorch on since very, very, very early on, and I really like him. And one thing I really like about him, guys, I'm going to read you his whole kit because he's got one of the easiest to read, easiest to understand kits that you're going to see in this game. AoE damage, multiple enemies 3 times. All right, cool. He does magic damage. Great. What's his ultimate? Increases attack by 25% for 25 seconds. By 20% for 25 seconds. Great. Now what's his passive? Increases attack in battle by 10%. There you go. You can skill these things up and stuff, but it's just basically, he's gonna do multi-target damage. He's gonna do some AoE damage. It's gonna be magic. That's pretty cool. He's got an increased range here. Instead of 1 tile in front, it's 2. And then his ultimate and his passive just make him do a little bit more attack. I'll show you very quickly. We'll go to hero details. Remember to click max level. He's got solid attack, nothing special, but with all those boosts, he becomes kind of relevant. And yeah, he hits kind of hard. He does magic damage. He does a bit of AoE. That's kind of all there is to say. Anything you want to add, Ronaldo?
Yeah, I think in theory he would be like really good for gear rate 1. The only thing that is a bit holding him back is the 3k attack, and the other thing holding him back is actually that he is Infernal faction, because maybe it's the best faction in late game, but it's not for gear rate 1. Gear rate 1 is not really an Infernal faction thing.
Yeah, that's true. And actually, you can see here, guys, the one place where there's a dash where we said he was unusable is Guild Boss, and that's kind of where Infernal units shine. So he's just the odd man out, unfortunately, that he does not perform well there, or even really perform at all in a relevant manner. So taking it through, we think he's quite good in Gear Raid 1. If his attack was higher, this would be even higher, but you can just hide him behind the wall, so he's not taking any damage, and he can just pump out some AoE magic. Gear Raid 2, we still think he's solid as well, because you can put him behind a defender, since he has the extra tile of range. Arena, he's not irrelevant, but he's not special. You don't really need AoE magic damage for a lot of things, and for the AoE Arena stage, you probably will have better options quite quickly. AMR, he's quite good. You can put him behind one of the units facing in towards Salazar. He can do some proper damage, even though it's AoE, and then when the parasitic beholders come, he can start taking them out if you build him well. Campaign, we think he's pretty good too, because you can just, again, hide him behind a stronger fighter or a defender so he can focus on damage. And finally, the same thing as it's going to be for a lot of these people, he's one of the only units that can be a relevant fighter in this Infernal faction, so he's pretty great. If you don't have a Zealot 2, he's an amazing option, right? So, moving right along to the Nightmare faction, and this is a place we're gonna hang out for a little bit, because the Nightmare faction is very relevant when it comes to fighters, and that's actually going to inform a lot of our opinions when it comes to faction trials for some of the lesser heroes, because they're just outclassed by some of the stars. So we're going to start with Daemon. If you guys missed it, I just streamed a couple days ago. Where are you, buddy? He only recently got a faction, if I'm not mistaken, but I just streamed a couple days ago to test how he is at 6 stars after a rework. Someone, Zero, built him up for me. He's not very good. There is some interesting stuff to his kit. I know we haven't talked about Awakenings yet, guys, but if you're going to use him, you really are going to want him at Awaken 3 to get this immobilized whenever you pick him up or he dies. But overall, I think he's going to be good for some piece of content that is not currently in the game. I don't know if there's anything you want to add, Ronaldo, while we're still on his page before we head back over to our tier list.
Yeah, I mean, you are more informed about Daemon. I don't have him, but like you said, reading through his kit, like in theory it's decent, but his low attack just holds him back as well, right?
Yeah, so just for anyone who's not familiar, so this is Daemon at max level, so you got 3200 attack. It's nothing nothing really to be impressed by. You can see here his talent makes you think he's going to be a lot more potent. Greatly reduces the revival time. For every 1 time of revival, increases the cost by 4 and damage by 10%, stacking up to 2 times. Okay, so now some more damage. And then, of course, his ultimate, which is activated when he's deployed, and he's going to be similar to Atrox in that you drop him, you pick him back up, you drop him. He's going to immediately get 40% increased attack, and that's upon deployment. So that's based off not his base stats, but everything you built on him. However, you can only get it so high. The multipliers on his moves are not that high. I played around with him a lot. He does some damage, definitely more than I was able to get with Atrox, but it's nothing too crazy, and it isn't AoE either. So we can move back over, and it is really worth mentioning this really short revival time and this really cheap cost. Pretty sweet, and he has some uses, and you're about to see it. But like I said, I think he's going to shine most in some piece of content that is not yet here yet. Okay, let's look at the list here, guys. So we got Daemon. We're giving him a D in Gear Raid 1. Could you use him to drop and get a quick bit of damage? And if you had him A3, a little bit of CC with the Immobilize? Sure. A little bit of the stun with his other moves? Yeah. Is it good? Not really. We're giving him a D. Gear Raid 2, he can be dropped the same way you do with Atrox, the same way you do with like Decimus, the rare champion. However, I don't think it will be as effective because he is just going to die right away. He doesn't have anything that really keeps him up, and it isn't AoE. Moving on, there's no use for these drop spammers in Guild Boss, and in Arena, I really think similarly so. You don't need his CC abilities, and the damage isn't good enough, so we don't think he's usable there. For AMR, he can be used. I tested this out on that said stream, and he was able to kill the oozes. The thing is, he's not able to be revived as quick as his revival is. He's not able to be redeployed quick enough to keep doing it to kill the oozes. However, if you're just, almost there, he could be dropped for a little extra damage and could maybe help push you over the edge and help you complete the stage. For campaign, I think he's probably usable. It would be cheesy, kind of like with Atrox, but there's no reason if he was built well, he wouldn't be relevant. And for faction, we're going to give him a C. You might say, okay, now our first really bad faction rating besides the terrible Cyclone. Well, you're going to see with all these Nightmare units coming up here, some of these guys are really, really good. So maybe a nice little transition into someone we absolutely adore, and that's going to be Deimos. I know I'm going to have a lot to say on this. Do you want to start it off for us, Ronaldo?
Yeah, I mean, Deimos is pretty straightforward. He is, you can see it on the kit already, continuous damage. If he has one single target to fight against, he just ramps up rapidly. But you have insane damage on Nightmare Guild Boss with him as well, right? So
I can pick it up. My Deimos put out 28. I mean, I'm not such a high level count. My Deimos put out 28 million damage against Nightmare 3 last night. First time I was able to get the full chest without any support units. Shout out to Dolores. Support meaning like friend assist units. And so he put out 28 million. My Arrogance, who's quite well built, and my Wrath, who's quite well built, put out like 13 and 14 million. So that really shows you how strong this guy is when it comes to single target. I can talk you through his very quickly. He's got a fun talent here. However, I would still suggest building him for attack. However, his basic attacks will deal a little extra damage based on his max HP. 2% extra damage. Pretty cool. He's got a nice, powerful continuous attack, physical attack on the basic. So 75% up to 85%, but it hits twice, and it hits a lot if you build him like I do with a lot of attack speed. So you're talking 170% damage on his basic, which is kind of nuts. Then here you go, because we're going to benefit from the talent as well. We're going to increase his max HP by 100%, just double that thing. Attack and defense by 20%, so he's a little tankier, and he can hit a little harder. Each basic attack lands 4 consecutive strikes, so all of a sudden you're just spamming. And it lasts for 20 seconds. You can skill this up in a pretty significant way, but the most important thing all about his kit is tearing. Each consecutive attack against the same target increases damage by 10% for 10 seconds. It can stack up to 6 times, right? So that goes up to 60%. However, if you get all the skill ups, now it's 15%, so that is what, 90%. And we're not going to talk about awakenings for every character, guys, but I think Deimos, you can chime in right after this, Ronaldo. I think he might have the strongest awakenings of any epic in the entire game. Maybe him and, I don't know, some lords. But he gets some self-heal on the A1. That's incredible if you're going to use him in content, not just Guild Boss, but outside of Guild Boss. A little base crit rate, easier to build, that's fine. Now tearing stack cap now goes up 1, and it's only at A3. So now the amount of stacks and the amount of damage added can go from 90% to 105%. That is more than double. That's crazy. Penetration cannot be overstated how important penetration is in this game. And then finally, this A5 is insane when you reach your full stack of tearing. So this is why he's great for single target. You want him only focusing on one person, so he gets this full attack. He's going to ignore 15% of defense. So this 5% penetration, this ignore 15%, and then getting that extra stack. You can tell I like Deimos, guys. I use him everywhere. I'm using him right now in single target arena. He's an absolute god there as well. If you pull him, use your soul stones on him. That's what I did. Anything you want to add, and then we'll go into this list?
I mean, best single target 4-star in the game.
No question. So yeah, it's reflected here, guys, in the letters. So we're giving him a D in Gear Aid 1. You could use him like in an old light log strategy as someone taking damage but not dying and putting out some damage, but there's no AoE. He's really not going to be good at it. D basically just means he isn't unusable, but he's terrible. He's solid in Gear Aid 2. He's really good if you save him for the end, and you could drop him just to focus the boss, because like we said, he can do major single target damage. The only issue is it can take a little while to skill up his ultimate. That's why we didn't give him a higher rating there. We gave him an S+ in Guild Boss, and I think I kind of just explained why. His damage is outrageous. It is totally endgame. It is totally elite. Arena, we were deciding if we should give him an S+. However, Ronaldo made a really good point, and some other people in the chat we were working in, that to give someone an S+, they kind of have to be like Hatsit, or the kind of champion that works in every single stage, every single version of Arena, but he's really only going to be good in sustained damage and unbelievable in single target damage. And then we have AMR, he's S. He's the guy that does the most damage for me on AMR 18, he's fantastic. Campaign, you can still use him, he's not great. You are going to want him at A1, Awaken level 1, and then Faction, he's S. Maybe even S+, who cares? He's amazing in Faction. Great. Should we head to the next one?
Mm-hmm.
Excellent. So the next guy I think we'll be a little less excited about. However, he is somewhat interesting. Do you want to help us talk about Gluttony here, Ronaldo?
Yeah, so Gluttony is basically a fighter who's also based on his max HP and does damage based on his max HP with his ultimate true damage. But if you do the maths and if you calculate some stuff in your head, you will realize that you can have 200k HP on this guy, and this ultimate won't deal a lot of damage either way. So,
what Ronaldo's speaking to here is like the most he could ever do is like half of his HP, even with awakenings, as true damage. And so then if you did 200% HP, you'd only be doing 100% damage, which isn't bad, but it's like that'd be the craziest build ever, right? And it's still, yeah, it's not the greatest thing in the world. However, we don't hate him. If we look here, guys, and we go to max level, he has extraordinarily high, actually solid base attack, but very, very high base HP, which is just pretty cool because he is a fighter, so he does put out some damage, but you can kind of build him like a tank in that respect. He only has 2 block, of course, but you can see here he's got a stun. Stun's a video. Maybe we have to do a whole, as a topic, we maybe have to do a whole other video about Sunday. Stun is so underpowered in this game. But then you can see here, he also can increase his max speed even further. He's got an interesting kit for sure. And then where's his Devour? And also in Gnaw, guys, he can self-sustain as well. So he's kind of like a self-sustaining tank when he gets those restores. So moving on to our list, if you want to take us through it, Ronaldo.
So yeah, you don't really want to use him in Gear Aid 1. Gear Aid 2, you can somewhat use him simply because of his like high sustainability, high HP. You can use him as an off tank if you want to. Other than that, you have AMR, where he greatly benefits simply from his stats. He has great base stats, and from the Nightmare faction bonus, because you will use Nightmare units there. So this is his main benefit, actually, that he is Nightmare. Same goes for Campaign. He is quite usable there, especially because of his self-sustain. You can put him somewhere and he will do his job. Unfortunately, his damage is not that high. And Faction S, just like Faction, we have C simply because there's a lot of competition for him. There's a lot of competition.
Yeah, there certainly is. On to the next one, and I'm definitely going to let you speak about this guy because I know how much you love him.
Yeah, so next up we have Komodo, my all-time favorite. I use him still to this day after over 2 months of play, and he's just
wow.
He's just so good. He's so underrated. He's fusible, he's free to play friendly, and you use him for one reason only, and that is his bleed. As you can see, his ultimate, when maxed skill up and everything, you will have 40 seconds of 100% uptime on his bleed, which makes him extremely good for all the single target fights. So AMR and Guild Boss is extremely good, and cause he is just there for the bleed, you don't really need good sets for him, which is quite a big benefit in the early game. Because how I beat the AMR first time, I put him in there, and I had just HP and the rage regen and some attack speed on him, and I have the same set still on him, just so he survives Salazar's ultimate. and he applies the bleed. And the bleed alone ups your damage in millions in Guild Boss, for example.
Yeah, and the important thing that Ronaldo is touching on there that some of you might not know if you haven't been playing for a while is with bleed comes the benefit of the artifact Scarlet Hunt. So even at base level, if you equip, it doesn't have to be the person putting out the bleed, but if you equip any of your allies with bleed and they're hitting a target that is under the effect, the dot damage of bleed, dot damage, that's redundant, but they will have increased 20% damage just flat up, and that can get promoted up and up and up. So bleed is super powerful, especially for single target in multiple ways in this game. So we don't have any relevance for him in Gear Raid 1. Gear Raid 2 is basically the same story. Theoretically, maybe you could use him against the boss, but let's be honest, you're not gonna. Guild Boss, he's an S. We even had a discussion, is he S+? But he probably is just not nearly as good as Deimos, so we left him at S, but he's really great, guys. Arena, he's still super usable. AMR, Artifact Mature Raid, we're going to give him an S too, because, I mean, as Ronaldo just said and proved, he's an amazing guide you guys can go check out. Like, one of his main damage dealers was Komodo, right? And not even just that the damage dealer was Komodo, but he was enabling all the other damage dealers that were wearing Scarlet Hunt, the artifact I just discussed, by putting out that bleed with such a great success. Campaign, could you use him? Yes. Will he be good? Probably not. And then Faction, you see, now he gets to a B, but again, there's a really strong competition in this faction. I say let's move along to the strongest competition there is. I'll let you take it away, buddy.
Alright, so next up we have the Lord of the strongest fighter faction. No one else but Wrath. We all have him, we all love him. And yeah, his awakenings are strong, his base skills are strong, he has it all. And he also benefits, of course, of the fact that he is the Lord of the strongest fighter faction. And only because of that already you will use him in so many places, even if you have the top tier legendaries. Let's say you have a top tier legendary like Salazar, you have a top tier legendary like Arrogance, then you start switching out other epics, right? But you're never gonna switch out Wrath unless you have a legendary Lord, and come on, who has that, right?
So unless you get Toreador, who even, you know, as good as Toreador is and would be more relevant than Wrath, Wrath still holds his own. He's so good. Wrath really can do everything. I just want to go back to his kit very quickly now that the game unfroze. Just want to say, something amazing about Wrath is how cheap his ultimate is. And there's some amazing things you can do with some amazing gear sets, guys, like the Wisdom and stuff, when taking advantage of a low ultimate like this. And as Ronaldo touched on, these awakenings are nuts. Triggering Soul Basher, which is his passive, that can give an automatic crit. We get crit damage into the kit. His talent has crit rate built in, plus a double hitter. It's so cool. And then all the way up to penetration, like I said with Deimos, so good. And then he gets this self-sustain, which is an extremely potent self-sustain. Heavy Blow is going to restore 30% of total damage dealt, and he does a lot of damage. So let's move along to our sheet. And as Ronaldo touched on, he's going to get boosts in a lot of things, even if he wouldn't be an absolute superstar. He'd just be a star because he is a Lord, and that gives Nightmare Faction and their units is all about this attack speed bonus you're getting from the Lord skill, right? And you really want 4 Nightmare Faction members deployed to get that. And he makes that all cook, right? So if we're looking at the list here, guys, you're gonna see a lot of S's, and he's gonna be the first S+ champion and the only S+ champion on our list. He's as good as it gets when it comes to epics, folks. So he's a Lord, he focuses on self-sustain. We're giving him an A+ in Gear Raid 1. If you guys haven't seen it, you can check out my video where I showed what's the worst team. If I left Power of Dominance on, what's the worst team I could make that could beat Gear Raid 118. Wrath did the vast majority of the damage because he does have AoE built into his kit. A- here for Gear Raid 2. He's still super usable, and even if I probably was leaning more towards like a B+ here, he's a Lord, and there's amazing Nightmare units you're going to bring in there, and you're going to use him because he's the Lord. Guild Boss, he's S+. You know, we probably would give him like an A+ or an S in terms of just him, but Nightmare is the second strongest faction for Guild Boss. Unless you're blessed to get a Toreador, you're going to use Wrath, and he's goated for it. Arena, same exact story. All of my teams are in some way Nightmare teams for all 4 stages. And I use Wrath in all of them because I need the Lord. He's never my strongest Nightmare unit, but he's also not a liability. But yeah, my Arrogance wouldn't be able to do what he does, my Abomination, without Wrath. Wrath is amazing. Same exact story for AMR. Actually, AMR just right up. He probably is worth the S or S+ himself. Because he has that self-sustain, he's amazing for taking on those oozes. You guys can check out Ronaldo's guide again. He uses Wrath in really cool ways. Then if we go to campaign, he's got the self-sustain, he puts out big damage, he makes your Nightmare thing hum, it works. And faction, duh, he's a Lord and he's amazing at it, S+. I think nothing more to say. Shall we go to our last Nightmare unit, but really transition to the Chaos Dominion as we talk about another dual membership hero, and that is going to be Vladov. You want to take this?
Yeah, so Vladov, we had to go into it a bit deeper because he is a relatively new unit. He's a lord from the Chaos faction. And in theory, if you look at his kit, you would say, oh, okay, nice, he's a bleed applier. You barely have any units that apply bleed. The main problem for him is actually that he is just not as good as other bleed appliers, and he just cannot keep up with most of the others.
Yeah, 100%. And also the places where you're going to use bleed, like against these big bad bosses or the guild boss, you need some tankiness or some great healing. And because he's chaotic and he's really meant for arena, as you can see here, as they kind of all are, he's going to kind of kill himself. Because that's just how these units work. They need to have low health. We can look at his Lord skill here. Increases faction allies damage, himself obviously included, based on lost HP, up to when they're at 30% HP. And yeah, and then another thing that really jumps out, because like I think attack speed's super relevant, especially for Nightmare units, which he is one as well, but increases attack speed by 30 for 8 seconds each time taking damage. Sounds amazing, but think a big place for a bleed unit, you're going to use them, is going to be the guild boss, and the guild boss attacks very periodically and just once, so he'll probably never get more than 1, maybe 2, but realistically only 1 stack, so it's really just a bonus 30% attack speed for a lot of the content you would use him in. And then finally, it's worth mentioning as I transition back to our sheet, he's a chaotic lord, so it's super cool that he's a lord, but like, who has chaos heroes? Some people, but it's so niche, and I think it just makes him a less, you know, usable, realistic champion for a lot of us. Let me pull this up here, guys. So you can see we call him, he's a lord, and he's got that low arena cost. He's got the benefit of that corny little chaos thing. There's no real use for him in his single target in Gear Aid 1. Gear Aid 2, we said no use. Could you use him against the boss at the end? Sure. Do you have better options, like a free option in Komodo if you wanted to go that route? Yeah, so let's not use him there. Guild Boss, we're giving him an A- anyway, because he is Nightmare, so it's like the second best faction for Guild Boss, and he does have Bleed. He's just probably not going to shine as much as someone like Komodo, who isn't trying to kill himself, but he probably will put out some damage. If you have used him to better success, please let us know in the comments. Arena, he's going to be really good. We gave him an A. Actually, looking at this, I almost wonder if we should give him an A+. I think I'm going to change that. Because he is the lord of like the arena faction. He's going to be really good. Just him himself with dot damage and stuff, except for really sustained DPS, he's not going to shine, but he is super strong. AMR, he's a B-. He can still put out that damage. It's going to be hard to keep him alive, but if you can do it, he'd be pretty relevant in helping out on Salazar. Campaign, we're giving him a C-. If you happen to pull a bunch of Chaos units and you can make a whole team work and he can be the Lord, that would make him relevant, but otherwise, I don't know. And then Faction, we just said, this doesn't mean he's bad, this just says we don't have Chaotic Faction trials, so we just put a dash. It's as simple as that. For an overall, we still gave him a B+, because there are a lot of interesting things going on in his kit, and he is a Lord. So when you do get those Chaos faction units, I'm sure we all will get a couple eventually, I hope. He will help, and he's not bad at all.
Yeah.
Should we move on?
What I wanna point out on Vladov as well is that Chaos is the newest faction, and he and his Lord skill will ramp up with time when there are more units of this faction out there, and when you have more of these, of course. So he will get better, but at the moment he's at the B+.
Yeah, he'll certainly get more relevant, but right now it's just hard to, you know, imagine him being super relevant. Okay, moving right along, let's go back to the game, and we're going to talk about a champion who neither of us have, and from my talking, and this is anecdotal, I think she must have lower rates. I've never pulled an Estrid, and I've pulled like, I think now close to 6,000 summons, between like 800 on my account and like over 5,000 for viewers. But she, from reading her kit, so guys, we're actually doing a call out to you guys. If anyone here uses her, let us know in the comments, but just reading her kit, she sounds unbelievable. So I'll take it through really quick, and then Ronaldo can take us through the ratings. But basically, her basic attacks have a 25% chance of landing a second strike. Really great. So you kind of have a little multi-target built into what is a pseudo AoE kit, and then full out AoE on the ultimate. So nice little A1 there. On the ultimate, like I said, she's going to increase her attack speed by 70, so that's pretty relevant, that's pretty significant. Could knock 0.1 or 0.2 seconds off her attack interval, and each attack is going to deal 240% AoE damage to enemies in range. This effect lasts for 15 seconds, so basically it's just turning her normal attacks here, so like their basic attacks that are affected by her attack speed and thus reducing her attack interval, those are now going to turn into 240% AoE damage hits. It's going to last 15 seconds. If you build her really quick, she's going to be really, really, really strong. And then here, if we look, this is kind of what we love the most about her. Each attack is a 20% chance. You can get this all the way up to what? 30% chance to trigger defense reduction. When you skill this up, it's 30% defense reduction, guys. Defense reduction is insanely rare. The only epic we could think of, let us know if we're missing anyone, that has defense reduction is Maul, who's an amazing AoE ranged unit. But in terms of like a melee unit and then also kind of an AoE melee unit, it's pretty amazing that she has 30% defense reduction. So we have not used her because neither of us have her. I'm definitely going to do stuff with her in the test server when I have some time, but pretty cool. You can see her basic attack range is +1, so she now has a little extra further reach. She gets some crit built in. During the effective Blade Storm, her ultimate, there's a 25% chance of landing 2 strikes in a row, so 2 big AoE blasts in a row. Her cost is reduced, and then finally Rage Region plus 30% against penetrated enemies. It's just so good. Like, I mean, I'll let Ronaldo take it from here. We don't have her, but it reads super, super well.
Yeah, if you go through every single ability from her, like, you can just see the potential is there, and then you have on top of that, if you go back to her, the stats. Like, you have 5k attack on her, right? That's a legendary fighter stat pretty much. You have 5k attack, which just amplifies on her usage, and that is her being actually a damage dealer, and on top of that, increasing your whole team's damage just with this defense shred. And she has so much versatility. And yeah, let's go through the ratings.
Yeah, I actually, just while we're in the stats, now that you brought us here, and thank you for suggesting it, because these really are, like, these are better than Wrath's stats, right? These are crazy, crazy stats for an epic. They're legendary level. Look at this attack interval. It's only 2.6, which is right in the middle. You'd expect with such a big kit, she'd have a higher attack interval, but with 2.6, plus she's getting 70 attack speed from her ultimate, you could build her probably with about 280, so only 180 additional attack speed. You'd probably knock about a full second off of this thing. So that's extremely potent, because when the ultimate's going, every blast is going to be some big booming AoE. She's a badass. All right, Ronaldo, take it away.
So yeah, for her, we had of course some suggestions when we were talking about her, because we both didn't have her, but we all came to the conclusion that she's overall really strong. And if we take a look at our ratings for Estrid, now I don't see him at the moment.
Move my head out of the way. I'll take it away. So for Gear Raid 1, we're giving her a very, very nice A-. She's got the AoE, she's got the defense down, she should be really relevant. The only reason we're not giving her higher is because there are going to be platform units that are better, right? But she's got potent AoE and she's got some really nice debuffs. Gear Raid 2, we're giving her a great rating as well. When you have to deal with those big mobs, you saw she has high HP and of course extremely high attack. She can help take them down. That decreased defense buff could be really nice as well on helping to take down that boss as soon as possible before he slams the rest of your team to the ground. Guild boss, we didn't put anything in here, and we didn't even put a dash because we're not sure since we haven't tested her. I personally think even though she's got an AoE centric kit, the defense down doesn't make her relevant. I'm not sure. Let me know if you guys have used her. In Arena, we're giving her a solid A. She can be really good for a lot of good things as an AoE melee unit with those great debuffs. AMR, she's a straight up S. There's no reason this couldn't work in putting debuffs both on to Salazar, but also helping taking out those parasitic beholders and stuff with her AoE. Campaign, A+. I don't know why she wouldn't be helpful. And then Faction, her and Voroth really are the stars there for the epic fighters, and they're both really, really good, but she's an S because she's got the debuffs and because she's got the AoE. All right, so on to Voroth, her northern partner in crime. What do we want to say about him?
Basically, he is similar to her. He is a attack speed focused fighter who deals a lot of damage actually. He also has some potential with some AoE, but mainly he has just insane attack speed and insane stats. And it's exactly these insane stats that led me to actually build him to try to use him for artifact raid, and you can actually use him pretty well there in artifact raid. He actually performs with a lot of damage, with a lot of insane attack speed. Other than that, what would you like to say about him?
Yeah, I think we don't have to talk too long about him. He's got crazy high attack. He's got a cool kit and just endless attack speed. Increases attack speed by 800. That might sound more than it is because, of course, as you add more attack speed, there's diminishing returns to how much that reduces the attack interval. However, I haven't been able to do the math on this because I don't actually, it's not public, the calculation, but you can see he's also a 2.6 second unit. no question this would knock off at least like 1.2, 1.3 seconds from his attack interval. So he'd be getting close towards just a 1 second attack interval. And then when you include that 5,100, almost 5,200 base attack with these big moves, the chances to land consecutive hits, amazing stuff here. The AoE here with the Whirlwind Wind slash, he's super potent. I just pulled him last week. I'm very excited to now have the diamonds to build him with. I'm not going to move my head away this time because that was kind of a debacle. But you can see he's a super speed is how we're classifying him. For Gear Raid 1, he could help, but again, it's kind of the similar way that we talked about Deimos before. It's like he's maybe a little bit better because he has a touch of AoE, but there's going to be better options almost certainly if you're going to place a melee unit. Gear Raid 2, he's solid. Kind of just like a normal fighter. He's not going to put out the crazy damage like Deimos, but he could still help wail on some of those mobs and also the boss. Guild Boss, I think he would be really good. He's not in the perfect faction for it, but I actually do run a northern team. So if I didn't have other fighters, I probably would use him. I'd say the place maybe where we could even knock this down a bit is you're probably gonna run a Nightmare team, and you only have so many melee spots you can use on the floor in the Guild Boss map. Arena, pretty solid. He's got a touch of AoE. He hits super fast. He works. AMR, as Ronald just said, excellent. He can totally work. Campaign, viable, and then faction. We're just putting him at an A+ because I do think he's just one notch below the fantastic Estrid. All right, on to Ain, or Ein. I will never decide how I want to pronounce that. I'm going to hand it over to Ronaldo because Ronaldo absolutely adores this guy.
Yeah, adores is a strong word, but I think...
Nah, you love him.
Okay, fair point. I think he gets a bad rep for no reason at all. Definitely, I like him. I think he's underrated. I think he gets a bad rep simply because he doesn't deal a lot of damage compared to other fighters, but that's not really what he's here for, right? Because you don't use him for his damage. You use him for his talent, and that is to increase your team's damage by giving them increased damage output and penetrating their enemies. And on top of that, he actually has quite a strong Lord skill. And I think the Watcher faction has extremely strong Lord skill, because I use Leia a lot, right? I have Leia, and I use her everywhere, and my Tauriel just goes rampage. And I think the Watcher Lord skill is extremely strong. I used him in Arena together with the Tauriel anti-air defense. I won against Hutsud. I won every single match in Overlord Arena. Once Watcher gets a bit stronger as well, because at the moment it is the weakest faction, no question, but
it's true.
Once this faction gets stronger, I think his use is stronger as well, and you can use him simply for his enabling skills.
Yeah, absolutely. So the way this skill works, guys, is the more faction allies there are on the team, the more frequently it will happen. So the increased defense and the increased healing multiplier. So you're going to want to build ideally like a 5-person full Watcher team. But it's let's be honest, they are the weakest faction in the game right now. However, of course, more heroes will be added, and they'll get better and better, and this will become more and more relevant because it is super potent. So Ain, guys, he has 2 tiles of damage in front of him, so you can put 2 people in front of him that can be getting boosted. Normally, it will just be 1, but if you're using him just straight up for support, those allies will get penetration increase, they will get damage increase, and he will debuff, because if you can get him to awaken 1, which I actually did pull a dupe of Ain, he's going to do vulnerability to physical damage, so that's 15%. It's usually he's going to be buffing melee ground units, physical damage units anyway. Ain is pretty cool. I think we talked about it in our call yesterday, Ronaldo. Part of the reason people just don't love him is because he was free, right? You get him on day 7, so he doesn't feel special. But he's pretty, like, if Watcher was better, he would be used all the time by people, I think. Let's go into the list now, guys. You can see I'm blocking here, but Ain, he's a Watcher. He's a Lord with a damage boost. He really is there as a support, guys. He doesn't have great base stats, and he's not a big damage dealer, but if you use him properly, Gear Raid 1, he can be amazing, right? If you have Abomination in front of the wall, you can put Ain behind the wall, and he's going to buff that Abomination. You're going to do crazy AoE. I've tried it. It's nuts. Gear Raid 2, same thing. You can put it behind one of your better fighters. If you have a nice defensive defender that does damage, a damage-dealing defender, that's what I'm trying to say, like Captain Reeve or something, or Torador, you can put him behind them. They're going to do a lot of damage. Guild Boss, I actually think he's relevant. I think if we could do Watcher teams in Guild Boss, this would be higher, but he's going to put out, if you get him A1, this is assuming you have him Awaken 1, getting out that physical vulnerability, if you're not running a Nightmare team with Volca, is super important, and he can boost other people. You'll put him behind your best, you can put him behind your Deimos or something. It's super potent. Arena, again, relevant. I think Ronaldo just proved it. The fact that he was able to beat a Hatset team with the Toriel is very impressive. AMR, we've both used him there. You got to build him as a tank. but like for me, he buffed my arrogance when I was at lower levels. He can buff people. He's really, really good. Finally, campaign, he's fine. You get him early on, so we gave him a high grade here because he totally works. And then faction, because he's a lord, he gets an S+. And like I said, guys, Vladov, if there was a faction trials, would get an S+ as well. For faction trials, a lord is an S+, obviously.
Also, what I want to mention is mainly he benefits at the moment also a lot from Toriel, because I used a lot of Toriel. These rankings are a bit higher because I used Toriel in gear rate 20 and gear rate 2 stage 20 with and she is a watcher, and you don't need 10 units that you can deploy. You can put in Ein and just use him in the end, and he is therefore totally viable for this, and his watcher bonus, like I said, is quite underrated. Okay, so let's wrap this thing up with Dalyn. Back to our gallery, our final fighter in this long journey, and our first of 5 class specific epic tier lists. We've got Dalyn. I'll take it away. I use her a lot. Dalyn is very straightforward. She's like an epic version of Narvi, comparable to Cyrene without the crit rate. She's a cost regenerator. I alternate between whether I use her and Narvi. Depends on, do I have a lot of time at the beginning of the fight to ramp up costs? Then it's Dalyn. Do I need quickly to just get a little bit extra cost? Then it's Narvi. It's really as simple as that. She's 11 costs. You're probably going to run her in Rapidity. Maybe you'll run her in Mana Spring, but in Rapidity that will be 10. We got damage, we don't care. We got attack and crit rate for herself, we don't care. This is what it's all about. Restores 13 costs for all allies for every 30 seconds. I will say she's certainly better than Narvi, no question, if you choose to skill her up, because now this will be 15 costs in only 25 seconds. So then Narvi only becomes relevant in very, very short battles where you need her for a couple seconds at the beginning just to give you a touch of cost. I'd say overall, in terms of just all else equal, she is the best cost regenerator that we've got. If I'm not mistaken, let me just quickly check. Yes, you do get -1 cost as well at her Awakened 4, so she's an epic. As you play longer and longer, you might pull tons of her. That would get her down to 9 cost if you run Rapidity. I think for me, she's the best cost regenerator. However, as we move in here, I'll let Ronaldo bring us through the final stats. We did give her, spoiler alert, we did give her a B-, just because she's feeling that same kind of thing as, you know, niche but good. So you want to do the last little wrap up on her here, Ronaldo? Yeah, on Dalyn, actually the overall rating could actually be a bit higher, I think, because she's a lot stronger than.
You want to give her a B?
Yeah, B+. Because I have.
We're gonna do a B.
Okay, after my point we will up it.
Okay.
So like we said before, if you have time to use a cost generator, she's awesome. She's the best cost generator in the game. Problem is, in later stages of the gear rates and pretty much all the hard content, you barely have any time. Like AMR, you want to get the Salazar down as quick as possible. You don't have time to put in a Dalyn and wait for her to kind of generate cost, right? But here's the big but. We have her at C in gear rate 1 because of that. We have her at D in gear rate 2 because of that. We have her B- at AMR because in early stages you have more time. We have A- in campaign because in campaign usually you have quite a bit of time to get the cost up. Faction, she's C+. And here's the one thing that I want to point out, and that is Dalyn for gear rate 3. Dalyn for gear rate 3, if you use multiple marksmen, you have low initial cost to deploy a lot of units. So you can actually use her, and I've seen people use her in gear rate 3 21, and that fact alone is for me that she needs to be higher than any other cost. All right, I'm sold.
That's also a great moment to say, you guys might have been looking at this thing the whole time and saying, where is gear raid 3? Why is there only gear raid 2 and gear raid 1? Well, these are all floor units, and you can't really use floor units for gear raid 3. However, that's an amazing exception you just articulated. I use Narvi for my gear raid 318, and I could see how if I had a little more time or I needed more costs, I could switch over to Dalyn. So I do think that convinces me. We will give her a B+. Great way to wrap it up, guys. I guess I can finally just sort it A to Z here so we can see where everything shook out. Unfortunately, they're putting the S's and the S+, so it was just S for Deimos, S+ for Wrath. But you can see here, it kind of is like, you want to be above this line. I actually hate the way they sorted this. Let's go back to how it was before. You get a sense, guys. Thank you so much, Ronaldo, for joining us. Is there anything you want to add?
Thanks for having me, and yeah, we will do another video together on my channel, Epic Tier List, and I'm excited for that. Thanks for having me, Fast.
Thank you so much for coming. Guys, be sure to check out that video. It's going to be a full Awakened 5 epic tier list, every epic in the game. It's going to be a good one. I've been Fastidious. Thank you so much for watching.
Fastidious.